And we are wanting to connect with the neighborhood folks here at Merle to talk a little bit about what we're kind of calling it a placemaking exercise or opportunity, really. And this is coming out of discussion over the last few years about Merle Road in general and traffic. And there was a traffic study that was done for the whole corridor. And as an implementation activity on that, our engineering department is moving forward with a project that's from Douglas Avenue to Aurora to the north. So it's kind of the super block that the Merle Mall site is associated with. And you can see up here on the screen, we've got an aerial identifying that. And within this area, I don't know if you've noticed or not, but there is actually an extra lane on the west side of the road. So that's as you travel southbound, you have one more lane than you do when you travel northbound. And it's not for the whole corridor, it's just for this 2-block stretch. And so out of the study that was completed, eliminating that extra lane was identified as an implementation activity to improve safety. And so as we were having discussions with engineering about their project on the planning side, we thought maybe this would be a good time to think about making connections with stakeholders on the corridor to look for opportunities to make improvements here. Beyond, just putting in a curb, a new curb line, moving the curb line in, throwing a sidewalk in and some grass, what can we do to enhance the sense of place here? And so what we are going to walk you through tonight is a couple of different ideas that we have from sidewalk placement. Some other things that we were talking about is switching over street lights from those that are right now they're fed by an overhead line. If those would be replaced with street lights that are fed underground, then we could reduce some of the wires. We've also been having some great conversations with Des Moines Waterworks about their standpipe location in the middle of the block. And I'm really excited about their openness to maybe do some plantings and enhancements. We're trying to also coordinate with the Merle Mall ownership and Des Moines Waterworks as far as finding a way to get an easement through the mall driveway to allow Waterworks to pull their driveway off of the intersection, just for pedestrian safety standpoint. So I guess I'm kind of getting ahead a little bit of describing what it is we're doing, but I wanted to give you a sense of kind of the purpose or the magnitude of the effort. It's again, as you can see in this aerial with this AMI chair, we are focused on the west side of the street. So on the drawing here, that'd be the upside there. And we're really looking at back a curb. So, what would be a new curb line to the property line? What can we do? How do we think through about being creative but reasonable from a perspective of maintenance? So it's really contingent on partnerships. We also think there's an opportunity maybe for future partnerships, like, that maybe the neighborhood association can be part of. Maybe it's, for instance, you'll see some stuff that's art-based. Maybe there could be a partnership with a Des Moines Art Foundation, and there could be some art installations in selective locations. And so we want to be mindful. We're not, this project isn't constructing any of that, but we want to make sure that it sets the stage that would allow those types of things to be added in the future. So I think probably right now is a good time for me to hand this over to Laura Peters with RDG, local design firm that we've hired to kind of help us through this exercise. And she's going to speak a little bit about a couple of different concepts, some places where we'd be interested in hearing your thoughts as far as different directions we could take. We also have Dave Camp with our engineering department online with us tonight as well. I think some of you may have more like what I'd call more technical questions. And I do want to just reiterate that this isn't right now, this is and would be constructed in fiscal year 2026. So what we're trying to do on the planning side is figure out some of this big picture stuff that we can hand over to engineering And then over the next year or so, they'll actually develop the construction documents. So we don't have the level of detail of like exactly what every driveway would look like, or whether curb line profiles, that is yet to be determined. This is kind of a high level first step exercise. So Laura, do you want to go ahead and take over?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jason. So I'm Laura Peters with RDG. This is sort of full circle for me. A lot of familiar faces here. I actually lived in the Merle neighborhood, bought my house in 2004, and I was there until 2020, and I was part of the neighborhood planning process in 2006. And I think April, you were probably a part of that at the time. Yeah, so I know that even back then when we worked on the neighborhood plan, having a sidewalk added in front of Merle Mall was important to us then. And so, here we are almost 20 years later, and we're finally getting it done. So I feel pretty excited to, be kind of on this end of the project and moving it forward. And I do want to also introduce Doug Adamson from RDG. He's my colleague that's been helping quite a bit with the planning and creating some of the renderings. And also I want to keep this, loose. We have a small group. So if you have questions as we're moving through this, please feel free to, jump in. We don't need to wait till the end, till we're done. So with that, as Jason, shared earlier, as you're aware, we're going to be taking out that southbound turn lane on the west side of Merle Road. And what that does, right now, give or take, there might be 12 feet between the curb line and the property line in that right of way. And by taking out that turn lane, we're gaining about another 10 feet in right of way, some real estate that we have to work with as we're looking at adding in that sidewalk. So here's just kind of a picture to highlight what that is. But, in your mind thinking, we roughly have 22 feet that we'll be having. We'll show you some concepts of what that could look like. Our team actually, initially started looking at 3 different concepts of what a sidewalk layout could be. We ruled out one where we would have the sidewalk a little bit closer to the property line and a little bit further away from the street, simply because there's just so much topography. We would need extensive retaining walls. There's a lot of utilities that are also in there, some utility boxes. I think it was going to be pretty complicated to implement that, and maybe a little bit more challenging for the property owners as well. But within that real estate that we have now, we did come down to 2 different sidewalk alignment options that seem to work. One would have the sidewalk kind of as a straight path that would sit off of Merle Road, roughly 7 feet, and I'll have a diagram to show that. And another option is maybe, kind of what we ended up with as a hybrid between the option we ruled out and our straight sidewalk option, with a curvilinear sidewalk that could meander within that right-of-way space. So in some parts, that's a little bit closer to the street, and then in other places that would be a little bit closer to the property line. Merle Road is also a state highway. It's Iowa Highway 28. And so with that, we have some extra requirements from the Iowa Department of Transportation. With clear zone requirements, we need to make sure that anything that is not breakaway is 8 feet minimum from the curb. So a tree, for example, would not be considered breakaway. That needs to be that minimum of 8 feet, ideally 10 feet. Oddly enough, a light fixture is considered breakaway. Those are designed that if a car would hit a light fixture, that's going to snap. So sometimes you might see a pole on the side of the interstate that's been pushed over. So light fixtures, utility poles, can be within that right of way. The sidewalk can be within the right of way. Shrubs, maybe some low-level landscaping, but just want everybody to keep that in mind. Also in Move DSM, which is the City of Des Moines Mobility and Transportation Plan, they do have guidelines for the sidewalk to keep that 7 foot from the curb minimum. So we are wanting to make sure that we've adhered to those standards. I know that you might not be able to see this very well. We'll zoom in. But as we look at the project study area from Douglas Avenue to Aurora, this is how those two concepts might play out. So again, here's the straight sidewalk coming through versus having something a little bit more curvilinear in that. Both of those offer some opportunities as we're moving through that. And then we'll also circle back to some opportunities that we might have at the Des Moines Waterworks Tenny Standpoint sites. And then also some opportunities that we might have down here at Popeyes, which is actually the entrance into the city of Des Moines and into the Merle neighborhood. So zooming in a little bit, this is the section between Douglas and the entrance, just to orient yourself. We'd have the Target parking lot, Starbucks, and Applebee's. With the straight concept, again, we would be 7 feet off the walk. And I should have put a key on, but these yellow circles here are indicating opportunities for maybe, you know, a unique visual element of sorts. And this would be outside of the scope of what we would be constructing now with the sidewalk. But as Jason mentioned earlier, there could be opportunities to partner with Des Moines, like the Public Art Foundation, for example, maybe with the Historical Society, to incorporate some more specific placemaking elements, or I don't know, I hate to say streetscape elements, but some of those visuals that you might be looking for, there would be opportunities along the street to implement those. With a curvilinear sidewalk, as you'll see in some renderings we have, because of the topography there's maybe a few more opportunities to implement with the retaining wall that would be needed. A retaining wall would especially in some areas south here that are a little bit tighter, that also incorporates some placemaking opportunities to use that as a seat wall. And with that, we would also have opportunities maybe for some special planting that could be included. We want to be mindful of maintenance and knowing that the property owners that would be adjacent to the corridor would likely be responsible for anything special. So having been in a position myself where I'm, you know, weeding flower beds on other properties, we want to make sure that it looks good in the long term and that it can be maintained. This would be looking with those same two concepts moving north between the mall entrance at Madison and Aurora to the north. So what we're showing here is how that driveway access into the Tenny Standpipe could be relocated if Waterworks is successful in getting an easement with the Merle Mall. We're really appreciative. We know that that's not an ideal situation for them either, to have a trailer that's, you know, backing out into Merle Road. Again, we would have a couple concepts where either we could have a straight sidewalk through along the corridor with a couple of visual elements that could be added, or we could be also looking at a curved sidewalk. We do have a few more challenges in this north section. Des Moines Waterworks has a major 24-inch, I think that's correct, water main line that runs to the north. And because of that feeder main, we need to be cognizant of not adding retaining walls or anything that would be, I think, you know, in the case of like a water main break, that would prevent or be a challenge for getting in for that repair, you know, something that would get torn up that they would have to replace. So we are trying to be mindful of that too, especially in this north section where that's a concern.
Where does that go? Sorry. Is that marked on there somewhere? Or?
You know what? We don't have it. We have a survey.
Okay.
That shows that, but it runs, as I'll show you in a bit here. It runs kind of right underneath that driveway, and it's a little bit here. But as it gets further north, it's sort of right under the sidewalk that's there now. So then, as we gain that extra real estate, it gets a little tight.
Okay. Because
impact.
we do right now, we have a couple of flower beds at Tenny, right there on either side of that driveway.
Yep, they're kind of right where those circles are.
Yep.
Right
Yep.
now. Yep. I have an image of those coming up here in a minute, April, so
Okay.
you read that one well. So here's an example of what this would look like. This is looking south, for example, at like the Applebee's parking lot. We'll circle back, but again, this is the visual elements that could be a future, project if the neighborhood wanted to work towards that down the road. Again, this would be, the sidewalk off of Merle Hay Road. And then this might be an option of what this would look like with the curvilinear alignment. As I mentioned, we would have the retaining walls that are there now. So if you think about, I should have put a picture in, at Applebee's, for example, they have a limestone retaining wall that's crumbling over a little bit. For this alignment, we would actually be taking out those existing retaining walls, putting a new retaining wall in. And I think that material would be up for discussion. Potentially that could be a poured concrete, something permanent. It could also be a retaining wall block, something that's modular and placed in. Because the walk is curvilinear and gets pushed over a little bit, further towards the property line where we have some of those existing walls, we have a steeper slope. And because of that slope, mowing could be a little bit more of a challenge for the big commercial mowers that would come in. Potentially then, if that's the case, we might want to work with the property owners that we could do something that would be like a no-mow alternative.
Yeah.
Here's some examples of what that could look like. There's a number of different options. One native nursery has what's called eco grass, and it's actually a grass that could be mowed regularly, but you can also let it grow longer, and it still, holds its form and does pretty well without getting too tall. We could do sedges, prairie drop seed. Potentially, you could put some color in there, and I think that would, this is still up for discussion, but it is a maintenance consideration that we would have for this option moving forward. So this is the retaining wall that I mentioned that's, starting to crumble a little bit. And before, what was this going to go? So this would be a visual of what this would look like as you're driving down the street afterwards. Again, with the straight sidewalk, we would be looking at, implementing street trees at a regular interval. I know that the city of Des Moines, typically with their street tree plantings now, are aiming for, I believe it's 40 foot on center. I don't know if they would necessarily want to be that close here. They could be. We could work to develop that, but again, these would be some pieces that potentially could be added later on. And then the curvilinear alignment, again, the wall, some opportunities for plantings. The trees, because of the alignment, whereas in the previous concept, the trees are on the backside of the sidewalk, and we know those are beyond that 10-foot sort of, I don't want to say ideal clear zone requirement from the DOT. Within the curvilinear concept, the trees are going to have to be a little bit closer. They would be at that 8-foot distance. And then with this as well, there's some opportunities to, incorporate where the sidewalk curves. There's some space that we could put in signage or artwork. We'll have more on that concept too.
I really like the look of that curvilinear option. It really adds a lot of dimension and, a bit of design and art to it. Much better than the old way.
I have another here at the Chick-fil-A site. So again, this is a little trickier. This is going to be coming out, but because of that water main, we're not able to implement retaining walls here, but we'll give you the same wow factor with some before and afters. This is the straight alignment again, just focusing on kind of street trees for that placement and some future opportunities for art. I don't think that the curvilinear concept it's challenging to always make that a consistent curve as we try to kind of meet existing driveways and where those driveways come in, that changes a little bit. So in some areas it might be a little bit flatter, some areas it might be a little bit curvier. This is one where it might be a little bit more flat, but you can see where we would have that slope that would be coming in where we can't have that seat wall. So we would have a steeper slope coming in here. And now to the Tenney standpipe. So as we've mentioned, April, here's the the neighborhood, one of the two neighborhood pieces. And I took these pictures last fall. I probably should have gotten out there and taken some now that things are starting to green up. But I think that we sort of forget maybe what this driveway looks like. And as we take out this turn lane, we realize that we would have to do something, even if the driveway were to stay, we would have to reconsider that alignment. And thankfully, Waterworks had indicated that was also a challenge for them, and long term, they would also like to spruce up the site. You can see the standpipe sign that's there now. They've discussed maybe wanting to do something with that, and they're open to exploring some options for improved landscaping. And
Cool.
yeah. So this is what that could look like, just adding some more trees and maybe some upper story shade trees, some understory trees. Imagine some crab apples, and then having some flower beds in front that would be some bright, colorful perennials that would bloom through the season and serve as an entrance.
Yeah, that looks nice.
Yep. I think that would be a really nice improvement, especially as an entranceway into, as with a new entranceway into the mall. From there, I want to turn to talk to more of kind of what we're calling the placemaking opportunities, those visual elements and what those concepts could be. Again, we're just planting the seed right now, but it felt like, now was a good time to show you some of those visuals, hopefully maybe generate some excitement and some ideas of what this could be. So we have two concepts that we've developed. The first one we're calling the tribute concept. What I had never thought of, I knew that Merle Hay was a soldier in World War I, and that he was one of the first three Americans that was killed in World War I. It had never dawned on me, even living in the neighborhood, that the reason they named Merle Hay Road as they did was because of the connection to Camp Dodge. And at the time that it was paved, they referred to that as being the greatest roadway project in the state of Iowa. So one of our, the tribute concept is intended to pay a tribute to Merle Hay, the soldier, but it also could be thought of maybe as just a tribute to the history of the area. We kind of liked the idea of the old sculpture that was inside the mall. I forget what the name of it is, Jason states. Maybe one of you, well, I'm sure any of you might remember
Yeah.
that, what that was. And I know that that's in a private garden now. But you know,
Yep.
there could be some elements of history that are kind of scattered along the corridor.
Yeah.
The other piece, the other concept we're calling the columns concept. There's a lot of round, circular, I think, forms that you would find in this section of the corridor. The Merle Hay Mall sign, of course, is being round. I always kind of feel like that's sort of a gateway into this stretch of the commercial corridor, but also across the street. Then, Rich, and I think is this even one of your properties? Then we have that same round form of the sign, and I'm sure that both of those are paying homage to the Tenney standpipe. So this notion is that we could somehow play on those columns with some colorful art pieces of one shape or another, liven it up with some artwork that, you know, could be lit up at night. Maybe it's not. What we're going to show is a material, a mesh that might be similar to the top of the Merle Hay sign. That I think it's kind of a gridded steel.
We could even marry the two concepts, you know, and still have columnar stuff, but also still have some Merle Hay stuff.
Yep, absolutely. It could be, again, it doesn't have to be one or another, and the Merle Hay stuff still could be round or colorful. I mean,
yeah, I like it.
I let your imagination run wild. So again, I just wanted to reiterate, these would sort of be a public-private partnership, whether that be the Public Art Foundation or I've been roped into sitting on the board for the Des Moines streetcar, the trolley loop. So if you're that new sculpture that's over by the Waveland Golf Course entrance, that would be another example, private fundraising that was done for that project.
Okay.
So we've met with Waterworks, and they had indicated that they might be interested in adding some interpretive signage to their site as well. I want to be very clear that, you know, what we're showing tonight has not been presented to their board, and we would be hoping to meet with, present to their board in June or July. So they haven't necessarily seen the concepts yet either, but I think that there's an opportunity with the enhanced landscaping that could move forward there on that corner, that we could also incorporate these art pieces in one way or another. So potentially here with this site, maybe there's a tribute to Merle Hay on one side here, and then on the other side there could be some signage for Waterworks and explaining the history of the standpipe or how that standpipe might work. Because of that water main that runs right underneath here, there's a 40, I think it's a 40-foot sort of construction, I don't know if easement's the right word, but isn't that's the space that they would need for digging into that pipe if it's needed. So we would want to make sure that we're kind of staying out of that 40-foot clear zone with that, which is why it's a little bit, I don't know, asymmetrical or symmetrical off of that space. So here's that same image of what that could look like as a driving by as a motorist. And then the columns concept, the same sort of thing, that's maintaining that 40-foot distance in there. You know, those columns, they could be taller, they could be shorter, lit up at night. potentially, and also incorporating those along the walkway. There's an image of that. And then, as I mentioned at the beginning, oh, I'm sorry, April, did you?
No, I was just saying cool. I like visuals. Visuals are very helpful.
They really are. We all appreciate them. So this would be, potentially another opportunity at the Popeyes corner. Again, as I said, it's the entrance into the city across the street at the Pita Pit. I know we're in Urbandale at that point, that there could be also a piece there at a smaller scale that is that welcoming entrance with landscaping. I mean, it could be simply landscaping, but I think there's also opportunities to incorporate one concept or another. So this is what it could be, as sort of a standalone horizontal sign instead of a vertical piece. Or it could be something like the columns with more of that same landscaping that could be incorporated into the waterworks site, just to have some consistency, build that theme along Merle Road.
Now, who would be responsible for all those plants, taking care of that to make it stay like that?
That's a great question, Peggy. Would Merle Neighborhood Association want to take it on?
Boy, those
I'm
are some
sorry.
big plots, but
Yeah.
but yeah, was Kathy wasn't able to make it tonight. That's all right. So yeah. But I mean, we are, like I said, we already do have the 2 beds there. So I mean, I would think, I would think she'd be okay with doing something. It's just a matter of, I'm sure we couldn't take on that whole stretch. That would be probably way too much. But we could certainly, I would think we could certainly help out with at least some of it. I don't know. We'll have to ask Kathy.
That's the upside of what we're trying to, at this point in time, all we're doing is making sure that we think of these things, like create a platform for these things to happen, but it doesn't have to be figured out. There's time to see, what is their interest in. So,
Yeah.
Initially this would just be, sidewalks and green space, this particular image. But as a group, if something came out, that you decide, hey, we want to do something here, maybe it's a lot less in scope than what you see here, or maybe it's something totally different. At least we know that this is, an area where it makes sense to do that. We've kind of held, it's like kind of a placemaker, placeholder is what I meant.
So how would these things go about happening? Is that something that we would have to kick off? Is that, I mean, I guess we've not done something like this since I've been involved. So I don't know the ins and outs of how all this would work. I mean, to me, it almost seems like, once all this kind of work is done, that would be the time to implement some of this stuff. But which means, the planning would probably need to start soon, the planning and or fundraising or whatever that is. So I guess I just don't know that process.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are great questions, and I think when we have a follow-up meeting with you, I think maybe we can share with you what we've seen, done elsewhere as far as
Okay.
projects that people have tackled, and how they went about raising money for it or making it happen. And I think too, you as an organization need to digest a little bit well, what is it you're interested in? Keep in mind, the city project's going to move the curb, it's going to put the sidewalk in, the street trees and the street lights. And we feel pretty confident that the Waterworks is going to do do landscaping, and I feel pretty good about their driveway options. I think both sides have been talking to each other, so I think that I feel like the waterworks corner is going to happen. Of course, what their
Okay.
project wouldn't include would be like signage or artwork. Well, when I say signage, they would probably at some point do their own signage, but if it wanted to be something more about like the historic markers, but we could also bring, if that was something that your neighborhood group wanted, if your priority is like markers and art, then we can kind of help, like, this is the people you should talk to. If your priority is you'd like to add more green space to maybe this corner, then it's kind of a different discussion. Like, does that make sense? I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
I think we'll come back to questions, but I just wanted to kind of step through, what the next steps might be. We would love to get some consensus and feedback on what you might prefer to see for the sidewalk alignments. April, I know you sort of shared what your preference might be, but we would like to, hear from others in the neighborhood. We can't make any promises. I don't think that that's necessarily, as we get into design development, that we'll be able to make it all work out, but at least we know that we have a goal going into that with engineering of what that would look like. And once we have that, the design team, Doug and I will be working on, refining that sidewalk layout and getting those drawings to city engineering, because we know that even though that seems far away to be constructing it in 2026, there's quite a bit that has to be done with construction documents and bidding and getting those documents prepared. So we do have to move relatively quickly on that. As I mentioned, we'll also be looking to meet with the Des Moines Waterworks Board to share some of those concepts with them. And once we have that, then we would circle back with the Merle neighborhood, whether that's at a board meeting. I think we still need to kind of determine how we're going to tackle that, but just to present the kind of the final report of what we've put together.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good.
So do we have others that have a preference on the sidewalk, or if anybody has any questions too? So
Chris has submitted a couple of questions to the question and answer, which I might be the only one who can see them. So Chris, if you wanted to ask those live during the Q&A at the end, that's fine, or I can read them. Just let me know your preference. But we can talk more about sidewalk alignment first. I just wanted to say that before we got too much further along.
I was just throwing them in as I was listening along. So either way, I'm happy to ask them or happy to have them read. No worries.
Will you be checking with the mall owners about the sidewalk? I assume they're going to be the ones that are going to have to shovel it. And what their
I mean,
preference.
every property owner is responsible for the sidewalk in front of their property. And we've had a meeting with Merle and Merle Mall ownership, and we'll be circling back to them. But actually, a lot of the property that fronts the roadway, they don't own. They've sold off the pad sites, or Target owns the parking lot in front of them. So we also have the complication of some out of town corporate ownerships. But sidewalk in general, sidewalk in front of your property is your responsibility, regardless of whether the city installs it or you install it as part of a project.
I notice there appears to be no provision for bike lanes. Is that a decision not to do bike lanes along Merle? I'm not advocating, I'm asking.
Yeah, I don't, because our part of what we're doing is kind of back, behind the curb. I don't know, Dave Camp is online. Dave, do you have any knowledge of where bike lane discussions are?
I think they did a traffic study, and that being a state highway and the amount of traffic and the speed of traffic is not a good place for the bike lanes. So that's why they are not incorporated in here. So,
I tend to agree with that, but obviously there are bike lanes on Douglas and other places that have impacted the ability of cars to get from one place to another. And
on Douglas, we're at
aren't there bike lanes all along Douglas east of Merle Hay?
Douglas that's not necessarily a bike lane. That's not a designated bike lane. That's just basically that was a pilot project to go down to 3 lanes. And so we are coming behind that with another project to actually move the curbs to the, move them out. The cost is tremendous to move those curbs. And if you go out there and measure it, it's about 4 feet. And so that's not wide enough for them.
Yeah.
And that's,
yeah, 57 in Douglas is a disaster. And I've talked to Chris Coleman about that, and he's had some conversations probably with engineering as well about that. So
he had some
we don't want
concerns.
to encourage additional cluster problems in the whole area. So
and you hit a
Chris
really
is
good,
on now.
Yeah. Oh, hi, Chris. And you hit a really good point about that in terms of when you do a pilot project, you can't do everything correct as you would have and invest in moving the curbs and such. But I think when we met with Chris, we showed the proposed plans of what the final solution will be. And I think that will alleviate a lot of the confusion in that area. So
and what's the timing on that?
Timing on that one is, I think that one is we have federal funding in that one. And I want to say, I don't want to.
Isn't it 2025?
It is not
some reason.
2025.
Nope. Okay.
I hope not, because we're not ready.
I guess that is just next year, isn't it?
Yeah. So give me 10 seconds and I will find that. You would think I would know that, but let's see here. Douglas Avenue, that's in fiscal year 27, so it'll be right behind. So that could be, the funds are available starting fiscal year 2027, which means it's October 1st of 2026. So the construction will most likely be in 2027.
But you're going to do some improvements at 57th and Douglas before that.
I don't know that we're doing them before that, because that's part of that federal. We can look at restriping or something. I can talk to Corey, but the final solution will have a good solution for that entire scenario, both east end and west end of the 3 lane. So,
Chris, we can't hear you.
Thank you. I do think that the frustration that's been voiced to me on that intersection, I know we're off topic a little bit from the Merle Hay sidewalk and corridor, but restriping east of Merle Hay eastbound to switch the through lane, I think is a wise thing if it's going to be 2 years until we fix it. So I would support you talking to your colleagues, Dave, about restriping and making it bright and trying to fix that cluster at 57th.
Okay. Yeah, I'll talk to Corey about that one. So he had the solution for the end solution figured out. So I'll talk to him.
All right.
We can talk some other projects if you want, Jason, and we can bombard your meeting.
Well, that's okay. I was just going to bring us back. I just didn't know if anybody else online. I don't want, before we lose anybody, I just want to see if anybody has any more questions that are specific to the segment of Merle Hay Road.
Well, I know Baker's Trust had some questions, and Sandra I see is on, and maybe Matthew as well.
I have questions regarding the sidewalk.
Okay.
By taking out that 1 lane, I assume then you're gonna have to get new drain systems, right? Because now you're gonna tear all that up and there's nowhere for the water to go.
Yeah, Dave, do you want to talk through that? The intakes on the,
So do you have the Des Moines maps up that you could share with that, or that? So what it is you are correct. There will be drains that we need to relocate over to the east about 12 feet. But the storm sewer main actually runs down almost the center of Merle Hay north south. So we don't have to replace a lot of storm sewer main, but you are correct. We just have to adjust the intake locations, which is a lot easier to do than replacing a whole main. So you are correct.
That was one of my questions, David, was if that water main that we're talking about runs parallel to Merle Hay, under the street there, and if so, how that works with storm. If we can't do retaining walls and that kind of thing, obviously, because of that and the easement, the construction easement that is there, or access easement, whatever's on file. But the stormwater mains, that makes sense that you really just have to dig up those intakes and move them, basically in towards the street at this point on that one side. Okay.
And I think Laura alluded to 2026 seems like a long ways away. But that's part of our process that we have to go through. We'll actually go out there and pothole, see where exactly that water main is, and have to work around that, find out where that is, how that relates to the storm sewer drains, all that good stuff. So yes, you are correct. There's a little bit of work to be done out there once we figure out exactly what we're doing, because we don't want to go out there and start designing stuff in flux. So
yeah, and I mean, just keeping in mind the flooding issues that we see at these along Merle Hay. I mean, if those could be addressed as we're doing different sections of it, the residents and drivers of that street would really appreciate it as well as the businesses.
So Chris, this was also brought up by Bill years ago and addressed with Jonathan. This project will reduce the amount of runoff a little bit from the paving, but it's not going to address the drainage issue. I think the drainage issue has to do with capacity downstream. So this project is not going to be going after that drainage system issue. So, and I know we've been, oh, go ahead.
Are you going to be tearing up the entire street or just
no, just the west,
just that one lane?
Just the one lane. So basically you'll remove that one lane, put a curb and gutter back on it, put your intakes in, but we will not, the hope is to maintain traffic as much as possible. So don't get into the roadway as much as possible. That's the goal. So
all right, so you're not messing around with the islands and stuff like that in the center of the street.
That's not our plan at the moment. So we have no plans to address, get into the islands. So
is the one lane, I'm sorry, I just wanted to ask, the one lane that you're speaking of, is that the one headed south, the right turn lane at Douglas?
Correct.
All right.
It's if you look at an aerial and you go back toward the north, you'll see the third lane extends pretty far north. So if you look at east side of the street, there's only 2 lanes. And if you look at the west side from Aurora all the way down to Douglas, there's 3 lanes. So,
Okay, so there will still be 2 lanes on the west side all
correct.
the way down.
Yes, correct.
And we'll keep the turning lane in front of Bankers Trust. Is that
Is
correct?
that, is
The
that
left
what-
turns.
The left turn.
Yeah, the left turns stay. Yes.
All right, thank you.
It's, can I say it a different way, Dave? The plan is to have 2 driving lanes, and the 5th median slash turning lane will still exist. So it's in essence of kind of 5 lanes, if the 5th lane is the median.
Hmm.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yep. Yes, correct.
Okay.
You
So-
said it better than I did.
So will there still be a right turn lane a little bit at Douglas? It kind of looks like there is, right?
Yeah,
That's-
Along the left end.
I do believe they are going to keep that right turn lane.
Thank
there,
goodness. Because I was a little worried about that.
Yeah, the graphic on the bottom is out of that traffic study from a year or 2 ago. So, I mean, this
Okay.
isn't like exactly, I mean, there's still design work to be done, but that was the vision, was to have that right turn lane there.
Good. Because that would back traffic up, I think, a lot on Merle Hay if we did that, and then cause rear end collisions and blah, blah, you know.
I
Um,
agree, April.
That turning lane is used a lot. So the right one is.
And has someone studied what amount of traffic calming or backing up will occur with this plan? In terms of how much more backup will cars be to get through various intersections?
Yeah, that was part of that traffic study where they ran it through looking at all those impacts of going down from 3 to 2 lanes, and I would have to reread the report, but yes, someone has done that. It's probably actually on our website if you were so inclined to read. I don't enjoy reading those in my spare time, but yeah.
Rich does.
What's
It's
that?
it's in the latter half of that the corridor study that was completed last year. It's all in there. It's there. It is super nerdy. It's there.
Well, I gave my copy to Sandra yesterday, so Bankers Trust will, I'm sure, pour over it on behalf of us all.
I did look at it, Rich, and it looked as though the study was done in 2020, which my concern was that was the pandemic, when the traffic may have been lighter at that time.
The counts would have been done prior to, and then the report would have been, the analysis probably would have, because if it was completed in 2020, the data analysis was, and it'll tell you exactly, I'm trying to pull that up right now. It'll tell you when the data counts were taken. Merle Hay. But yeah, and to your point, we did not do a lot of traffic counts for traffic studies during 2020, 2021. And even those that we did do in 2021, we've had to redo because of the shift of to your point. So, but yeah, I would have to pour through it real quick, but I would be 98% confident that the traffic counts were taken in 2019. So prior to.
We could potentially make some changes to the traffic light timing, maybe. Is that a possibility if there is backup that occurs?
Yeah, and yes, and we are also doing traffic signal timing projects throughout the city. I think we're on our 5th phase of it right now. We also have an ITS upgrade program that is interconnecting a lot of these. I do believe these are interconnected, but yes, between this project, the timing project, and the intelligent transportation system upgrades, yes, and that's even another thing that the traffic folks will watch and see how it performs and how to adjust those traffic timings as well.
Thank you.
Well, speaking of traffic lights, will all of those intersections traffic lights be updated for ADA?
The ramps will. Is there something else that you're referring to other than just the ramp accessibility?
Like the voice lights, that
So
kind of thing?
Yeah, it's called APS, and there's a process that they look at where they put those in. I don't know what the exact criteria is, but that there's only selected areas. Also, like the Iowa Commission of the Blind does not want those downtown anywhere where they train people. Also, I know we're not near downtown, but it doesn't go in on every single signal or location. There are criteria, and I build stuff. I don't do the traffic. I know that's out there, but I'm sorry, I don't know the details of what those are. So I cannot answer that with 100% confidence.
Okay. I just know I've seen some blind folks walking, to the
Yep.
mall, and
Mhm.
it scares me every time. I mean, just the thought of them passing through all of that traffic and just not having very good lighting, very good
Right.
traffic help for them.
Yeah.
That's another point to straight sidewalks, April, too.
True. That is true.
Yeah, we did some curvilinear sidewalks down along Ingersoll west of Polk Boulevard.
Mhm.
This is years and years ago, and that was not a popular thing. So these are a little bit more gentle. If you look at an aerial of that area, the curvature of those sidewalks is pretty aggressive. These sidewalks, the curvilinear is pretty gentle. It's not it's not very aggressive. So
Okay.
It's more of intended to be kind of a gentle meander.
Yeah.
I was gonna pull it up. I live near that Polk Boulevard there in Ingersoll, but also there are you can see my screen here on Google Street View. With that design, there's these like limestone blocks.
Oh gosh.
That
Yeah, that
So-
would be.
yeah, I walk through here with my dog probably 4 times a week, and I don't think it's so much the curve as it is some of
The
the
blocks.
that kind of move into the sidewalk, and so I think that's probably the challenge. But to Dave's point, I think we have a much more gradual curvature that I don't think it would necessarily be a concern if that's the option that people prefer.
I wanted to ask about the bus stop in front of Starbucks. Has there been accommodations for people who get off at that bus stop to get into the mall? Right now, there's really nowhere to go from there. There's a driveway and grass area.
Which area was that, Sandra?
The bus stop that's in front, and there's a crosswalk there, but then it doesn't go anywhere from there. As you're going into the mall, you need to go up an incline, going against traffic
Mhm.
to get into the mall.
Yeah,
So I
you mean
think-
like right at Starbucks?
Yes, at
Right there.
Starbucks.
Oh yeah, I see people walking on the driveway sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the discussions that you guys had with the mall leadership, I think.
Yeah, we've brought that
Jake.
up to them a few times. with the
Yeah,
bus
I mean,
stops and
we,
such, yeah.
there's every time a pad site, or like when the Coles redevelopment is done, whenever we have the opportunity through the development review, we are looking at getting sidewalks added, thinking about pedestrian connectivity. I don't there's I don't have like a magic wand solution. I don't know from this perspective. I don't know if Laura, if you can go to the slide just showing a whatever our project is, we're going to have to account for the stop. It's challenging to. There's the different layers of property ownership, because again, there's the mall ownership, but like Target, Target corporate owns their site, they own their parking lot. Like Starbucks is separate parcel, credit union is a separate parcel, Applebee's is a parcel. So we got a lot of different owners. So the downside of that, it's harder to just like call up one property owner and have a cohesive, even though we all think of the mall site as kind of one site, it's really chopped up, unfortunately.
I'm sorry, Jason, which slide
Well, just, I don't know if you could zoom,
on the,
sidewalk overhead one, zoom in to where Starbucks is, just to kind of get a sense of, I was thinking more of the graphic that
yep.
show the different sidewalk routes. Just so we could all at least understand. So is the bus stop, I just don't remember, is it directly out front of Starbucks to the, give you the east?
Well, I know there's a stop in front of Rich's building there, and then they cross over. There's a little approach, and then there's a pad, but there's really nowhere to go from there.
I think it might be on the north side of the entrance to the mall there at Starbucks, like out in front of kind of the parking lot at Applebee's. Okay. It was on one of your earlier slides, Laura.
I actually was gonna say, I think I have a picture of that somewhere.
If you can just pull up Google Maps, it shows everybody's correct. There's a bus stop on the north side next to, and then one on the south.
Let me just
there seems to be a bus stop on the east side of that intersection.
Overall, I think this project for that entire length would probably alleviate the bus stop access issues, because they would all be directly in front of a sidewalk that would be installed along the whole corridor. So yes. I think we'd be good in general.
But does that mean that the bus will block one of the two southbound lanes?
Yes. That is, I think that's DART's preference. That's what we've been told several times.
Yeah.
Because they can't get back in.
I understand it helps the bus driver. I don't know that it helps the traffic flow.
Well, just think, Rich, they'll have to slow down so they can see what's in all your buildings there, and they'll be like, oh, damn it, I did want this donut.
So Starbucks would cross over and up. I think they have to walk up the driveway right now.
Yeah, the northbound.
Yeah.
Sandra or April are right that you get off. Yeah, do the 180 from where you're at, and you can see that pad there.
Yeah,
so
there's a bench.
If you're going northbound,
keep going, Laura. Keep going around to the east side.
Oop. Oh, sorry. Okay.
Right where the blue that. Yes.
So that's the northbound spot, and then people walk across the street there and get to that concrete pad I showed a minute ago.
There's really no crosswalk marked. It's a dangerous area to cross.
There's a sidewalk literally has been cut out today. And so this whole intersection that you're looking at right now, including the flower bed, they're going right through the flower bed to connect the sidewalk to Banker's Trust sidewalk. And I think they're redoing, what would you call it? Essentially handicap access on the sidewalks to get down to the street. But, everyone's right. As you go across the street to Starbucks, then you end up with a pad and a hill. So.
Yeah, the traffic signal pole is right on the sidewalk.
Yeah, a lot of help that is.
But again, if you drive out there right now, it's the bench is probably gone, and there's the sidewalk's been cut through, and it's probably going to be poured tomorrow. So there'll be
good.
That part's being done.
So what size sidewalks are these going to be? Are they 4 foot, 6 foot?
I believe this, well, Dave, I shouldn't answer. This is it's your area. I think I know the answer, but I'm gonna let Dave answer.
Go ahead.
5 feet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're 5.
Yes, I nailed it.
5 feet is more the ADA required. It'll fit a electric wheelchair. If you do 4 feet, you have to go every 150 feet and widen out for a passing area. So it's just simpler and a lot easier. If I'm walking next to somebody shoulder to shoulder, I can't fit on a 4 foot walk, but I can walk.
Yeah, 5's definitely better.
Yeah, it's the new standard minimum.
Okay. Good.
Chris had a couple of questions in the chat. He wanted to know if there's a southbound right-hand turn lane at Madison Avenue. Could we go to the plan to answer that question?
Let's see.
Don't believe so.
Is the question turning west into the mall there?
Yeah, it would be like basically where the standpipe is. It looked like based on the plans, there's one at Aurora that's there where that whole lane starts right now. And then there's one at Douglas, obviously, which I think is a good idea. I just wondered if there was one at Madison as well, across from Madison. I don't know that that's technically Madison once it crosses over Merle Hay and goes into the mall, but the standpipe.
Doesn't look like that was envisioned in the traffic study concept. And was there another question? I thought I heard that there was 2.
We've been answering them. Another one, I think we answered your median question, right, Chris? So they will be concrete.
Yep. Yeah, you guys, basically you're not moving them. So my question's a little moot, I guess.
Yep. And then Chris had a question about how the sidewalks will be paid for. Do you want me to read it, or would you like to ask a question?
I can ask. It was just one. So there are a couple properties that have gone to the trouble, or I guess not the trouble, but probably as part of their site plan process, they were required to put it in sidewalks, and they're not connected to anything because, like Chick-fil-A, the properties on either side really haven't developed. Same thing with Unity Point, like the water tower, the standpipe doesn't have a sidewalk. And I want to say that the credit union may have had to put one in when they redeveloped on the corner there, southwest corner of Madison and Merle Hay. But Applebee's doesn't have one because of that weird retaining wall area. And then like Starbucks and Target don't have one. But they're straight, obviously. So if you go to the curvilinear thing, like with those would be ripped out and then replaced. My guess is the answer is yes. The other issue I had is like, how is the city planning on like, hey, this is probably going to be a general fund thing, or yeah, we're going to try and bond and use TIF, or we have no idea yet. I guess the one that is probably the biggest question there would be, is it going to be a special assessment? Like I don't know the facts, but I've certainly heard rumors about Ingersoll and that situation with some of those as they develop. So I was just curious.
So first off, it won't be assessed. There's no assessment. Okay. And if I missed one of your questions, there's a lot of questions there.
Sorry.
I would hope we're only, and I know Jason and Laura might disagree, but I would hope to keep the sidewalk that's already in place and not replace it. I would like to fill the gaps between them, to just as, the people invested in those, there's ripping it out, good sidewalk and replacing it may not. I would love to keep those. I'm looking up, do you want to know geo versus bonding or versus TIF? Okay.
No,
I-
I guess I'm not
Like-
super particular about that, David. I was curious whether it would be, as an assessment thing, or is it, like we're planning on getting this big grant, or the DOT is going to put a portion of it, or we haven't really gotten there yet, but we'll figure it out when we get to construction.
In the CIP years prior, we do have, I do believe it's geo bonds out in some in 25 and some in 26, and that's the city's direction from a number of years ago, is filling gaps. We haven't assessed a sidewalk in many years, kind of thing too. So
Sure, and that would include like the movement of the curb, basically the curb and gutter and stormwater intakes and all of that
Correct.
into that right bound lane. That would all be just kind of probably geo bonded as part of the
Correct.
city's annual like CIP process.
that
Okay,
is
got
correct. Yes.
Cool, thank you. I think the rest of mine were probably answered, Stacy. I'm good. Oh, except that I was just at Johnston City's halls last night taking some pictures, and that statue is in the back of their city hall, like on a little pedestal next to the bike path. So if you guys, I mean, I don't have a big enough car, but I bet it's just bolted down. And so if you guys like if you want to get it back for the corridor, maybe let me know and it'll show up. I don't know.
We did actually discuss here on our end, and like we should just maybe put that on, like, I don't know, the waterworks corner or something, and bring it back home, right?
I bet you Dave Wilwarding will sell it to you if you pay enough. Yep.
There you go.
And the name of the sculpture is Up Down.
Up to, okay.
Yeah.
Well, lots of great discussion and comments. I don't know that I've heard any definitive opinions on the sidewalk pattern, traditional versus maybe something introducing some kind of curvilinear elements to it. Obviously, Laura and I both would agree that we'd like to reuse what's there today. I mean, if some of it had to be, if we were going to do something curvilinear and some of it needs to be replaced to make it look right, then I think we'd have to, I think it's worth having that discussion, but in a perfect world, we wouldn't have to touch anything. But did anybody, before we wrap up, want to express an opinion one way or the other? I know I've heard at least one yay for the curvilinear, but I haven't heard much else. So
I think if it worked to do a mix, just my opinion is agree. Like if you can keep the ones that are in there already and connect those with some curvilinear that allows for gentle curvilinear, so we don't have people walking off the side. That I think that would probably be fine. If it turns out that these infill spots are not really big enough to do a big curve. I mean, you're talking about like Applebee's, and then you have the bank, and then you have like Target and Starbucks. That's a pretty big area. You might be able to do something interesting there. But then on the other side, you have the water tower, and then you hit Unity Point, and then on the other side, and on the east side, you have some gaps, but they're all pretty small areas. So I would say if you can do curvilinear in between on some of those larger ones, great. But use what's there if you can.
Yeah, I agree with Chris. And Chris, on the east side, that's being done in the 2024 sidewalk plan. So that should be completed on the east side.
Got it. I was going to say that I know there's a few gaps, but not quite as many. So cool.
I agree with that as well.
I think one question that I would maybe throw back to Dave too is, what sort of equipment would be in there, removing the curb and moving, the utilities, like moving the storm sewers, moving the lights. And is that heavy enough equipment that's going to be breaking up the sidewalk that's there now that some of that should be replaced anyhow? Or do you think you could, work around that sidewalk without damaging it?
No problem. We could work around it. It's fine.
Okay. The one last thing I had was the lights. I would like to see those go underground if we can manage it. anywhere we can get that done, I would like to see it.
Yeah, I think that's a really important aspect too. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've been wanting to get that done along the Merle Hay corridor for years. It's really unsightly.
You're talking about street lights, like putting in conduit for the street lights? Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's just those wires are just for the street lights makes it manageable. You know, it's much more complicated if we're talking about power service lines, transmission lines.
And just to be
Yeah.
clear, it'd be the lines on the east side of the street are pretty heavy duty. That's what you're talking about. The one on the west side is pretty pretty minimal. So
okay,
just want to be clear.
Yeah, we're talking about the west side only as part of this project.
Okay.
Make
April
it
may not
incremental.
have been though.
What's that?
I said April probably is hopeful that we can do both sides, as I am.
Well,
Wouldn't that be lovely?
yeah. We'd love to as well. Well, I appreciate everybody's time. We'll be, we'll shoot back out to the neighborhood group where this video is going to be and how to continue to input in the process and go from there. And I feel like we got some good direction on kind of how to think about the sidewalk. But anyway, really appreciate everybody's time and all the questions, and thank you for caring enough to spend some time with us and ask great questions. So have a good night. Appreciate your time.
Jason, can I jump in just real quick? You
Sure.
recorded this. If you're going to document the issues or the different things that we talked about, and some of them weren't even exactly what we talked a little bit about the incline into the mall for the bus on the west side of the street, things like that. Can we document all those issues so that we kind of have it as we continue to go through this process? Maybe send it out to all of us, or me, and I'll get it out to everybody. I'd appreciate that. And I just wanted to also say thanks to everybody. I missed the first little bit of the meeting, but I knew that I had already seen much of the presentation a couple of weeks ago, and I was really glad this meeting would happen. Not very often you get this many committed, knowledgeable, articulate, really well motivated citizens and stakeholders to be a part of it. So thank you very much. I'd like your continued feedback. We have all the feedback for the engineers and designers, but from a political level, we're asking the whole city to tax themselves, spend a lot of money, and I want to get this right for the key stakeholders. So stay in touch.
And you're sending out the slides somehow?
Yeah, this whole video, we recorded this whole presentation, so you be able to go
I don't need the
back.
presentation. I just want to be able to print out the slides. So
Yeah, we
The
can
slide
send
deck.
you- for sure. Yeah, Rich,
Okay.
and I think before we started the meeting, I talked to you about. I have your email address, so we don't. I'll get Stacy will send you the.
Yeah, I put it on the chat too. So.
Oh, okay.
So okay.
And we have been we coordinated this with April, so anybody else that's on here that if you for whatever reason you feel like you've lost touch, she knows how to get a hold of us. So reach into her, and April, I appreciate just you can kind of help make sure that we're connected to people.
Sure.
That would be helpful.
Yeah. If you could send me the PowerPoint too, that'd be great. I know the board folks that weren't able to make it would love to see it. So
Absolutely appreciate it.
Okay.
cool.
Spreading the word.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Everybody.
Good job.